Story 1. Someone once told me that they don't think airplanes are real and that they're just projections in the sky and video in the windows when you're on a plane. They believe we have technology for teleportation and that airplanes are just a guise so no one will know. That is by far the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Story 2. Dinosaurs aren't real. It's just a ploy to get people to visit museums and spend money. When I pointed out that many museums are free to enter, he responded, "Well, you buy things in the shop there, don't you?" So, yes, it's a 350-year global conspiracy all run by large souvenir shops. Story 3. When QAnon gathered at the grassy knoll, thinking John F. Kennedy and Michael Jackson would come back to life to lead them to a new America. This actually happened. Unbelievable. Story 4. The nanobots were in the vaccines. The nanobots are in the drinks at McDonald's. That's why the straws are so big. Story 5. The real Avril Lavigne died, and for the last 15 years, the Avril we have seen in public is actually an industry plant named Melissa. Story 6. The Earth is hollow, and the entrance is in Antarctica, which is where many Nazis went. This is why they fled to Argentina. It was a stopover before reaching Antarctica. Story 7. The germ theory is not real, and we have been misled about the causes of illness for decades. I have heard about people who do not believe human immunodeficiency virus causes acquired immunodeficiency syndrome, but the belief that germs, bacteria, and viruses do not exist is confusing. Additionally, none of the astronauts who died during the Challenger explosion were even on the shuttle. They are all alive, living under pseudonyms. The evidence for this includes one of the members having a twin brother, and it seems that some people believe all Asian individuals look the same. This is simply racism and ignorance. I do not understand the motive behind this conspiracy. I can comprehend the strange logic behind chemtrails, the United States attacking itself on September 11th, and vaccines being seen as dangerous, but the reasoning behind the Challenger conspiracy escapes me. Story 8. There are two lesser-known groups that I find quite amusing. One theory suggests that many celebrities do not exist but are portrayed by immortal, long-lived beings who secretly rule the earth. Those interested in this theory often spend hours examining random celebrity photos, comparing jawlines and ear shapes, and excitedly sharing their findings, such as claiming, "Brad Pitt isn't real. He's actually played by the Earl of York." The other group similarly spends hours looking at pictures, but of nature. They believe that there used to be a powerful race of giants on Earth that died and became rock formations. They will show photos of mountain ranges that vaguely resemble body parts and enthusiastically point out, "There's a hand, there's one lying there," and so on. Story 9. Trump is sacrificing everything to fight a secret underground battle against sinister forces led by Hillary Clinton. Story 10. My aunt and uncle use nicotine patches to alleviate their arthritis. They claim that the Biden administration, the Food and Drug Administration, and large pharmaceutical companies have been hiding this information from everyone, stating that nicotine has healing properties and that they have been misleading the public for decades. Their evidence is that when they remove the patches, they feel terrible. Story 11. That Diana, Princess of Wales, was murdered by a group of international florists seeking to profit from a significant increase in commemorative sales. Story 12. Not that I doubt some nefarious and evil actions are occurring among the wealthy and political elite, but the fact that everything about it is so convenient to certain political ideologies is concerning. However, few of the believers seem to recognize this issue. Story 13. My college roommate believed that giraffes were created in a laboratory by scientists who crossed horses with leopards. She wrote a paper about it for biology class. The professor's expression when grading it must have been priceless. Story 14. Barack Obama was the subject of negative remarks during my childhood. I learned that my family held racist beliefs. Story 15. Nesra and Gassar propose that the government will cancel all credit debt and establish a national or global currency, potentially dominating the world market and ushering in an era of global peace. This belief is held by some, including my mother. It is part of a deeper conspiracy theory narrative. Story 16. Jet fuel cannot melt steel beams. I started blacksmithing at about 15 or 16 years old, and the first forge I built used charcoal and a hairdryer. It would easily burn the end off a steel rod if I wasn't paying attention. Story 17. I just read something interesting this morning. Apparently, there is a theory that celebrities are being kidnapped, their DNA is being stolen, and they are being cloned. The claim is that a fully grown human can now be created in just 6 months. This allegedly happened to Tom Holland a few days ago and to Keanu Reeves in 2018. I'm not sure why this is happening, but I read it on social media, so it must be true. Story 18. The moon landing is often considered unimportant, especially for those who were alive at the time. During this period, there was significant tension known as the Cold War, which led to a competition in space exploration. The United States was in a rivalry with a global power that had advanced technologies, including satellites, telescopes, and radar. If the United States had not landed on the moon, the Soviet Union would have quickly exposed it, making the United States appear foolish. Story 19. Huge cathedral doors signify the existence of giants. Additionally, no one can create a sculpture like Michelangelo's. They are petrified humans. Story 20. I had a friend tell me she didn't want her child signed up for the Children's Health Insurance Program because she didn't want a chip put in him. She literally thought chip meant chips. Story 21. We are trapped in a prison dimension or planet where our misery is harvested by evil spiritual beings into lush, the most valuable substance in the universe. Medical beds is the second most valuable. Story 22. Honestly, any right-wing conspiracy theory in the last 10 years has been openly contradictory. I cannot understand how anyone could repeat that nonsense. Antifa and the Federal Bureau of Investigation attacked the Capitol. Ashley Babbitt was a hero. No, we don't want to see any of that investigated. Joe Biden engineered the largest election fraud in world history from his basement without leaving a shred of verifiable evidence. Story 23. Read about one today on Reddit. The Democrats used a weather machine to flood the Midwest to mine for lithium. Something like that. Story 24. That all Democrats and all of Hollywood drink baby blood is just a ridiculous conspiracy theory. It's interesting how Republicans are not included in this notion. How odd is that? Story 25. The one about there not being enough calamari in America, so they use cartilage from a pig's rectum to make calamari. Story 26. Last summer, not long before the latest United States election, an older acquaintance told me that Obama gave away over half of the General Motors shares to Russia. That's why its value tanked. I walked away, shaking my head. Story 27. Chemtrails. You don't need to know anything about jet engines, condensation, air currents, or any scientific concepts. The notion that people are engaged in a conspiracy to poison the atmosphere they breathe does not withstand even a moment of rational thought. It is simply too implausible. Story 28. Despite decades of being debunked and explained that the gun is a reflection of the passenger's head, some individuals still believe that the driver shot JFK. Story 29. I knew a man years ago who was convinced that humans evolved from pigs. He believed that pig hearts were compatible with human hearts. Story 30. It seems to be a flat Earth belief. Flat Earthers assert that all of the world's scientists, astronauts, geologists, educators, pilots, and mathematicians, essentially everyone knowledgeable in science throughout history, has been lying about this theory. They claim that the idea of a flat Earth supports the authenticity of the Bible, and that some groups do not want the truth to be known. However, the majority of people already believe in the Bible. This situation is quite absurd. Story 31. Paul is dead, highlighting the folly of those who believe and spread these stories. By folly, I mean specifically the failure to think through details for even a moment. Here's what would have to have happened. A man dies in a car accident. An ambulance and police arrive at the scene. It is determined that the deceased is one of the most famous celebrities in the country, ranking in the top 10 worldwide, most versions of the story of his death in 1966, when the Beatles were still the Beatles. His bandmates are notified. They get in contact with each other. It's 1966, meaning one-at-a-time landline calls. Perhaps deciding to meet in person to discuss as a group and cover it up by replacing him with a phony Paul to avoid derailing their success. They managed to contact all of the attending police, paramedics, and since by then Paul would have been taken to a hospital and pronounced dead, doctors and nurses, and convinced them all to violate the law and their professional ethics to hide the fact that Paul died. All of this would have to have been accomplished before any official forms were filed and before any word broke in the media. Or did they have to convince the media to keep it quiet too? Keep in mind that a Beatle dying in 1966 would have been the biggest news story of the year worldwide. After that initial effort to establish the conspiracy, they had a few other details to address. Like Paul's family, they might be concerned if they just never heard from Paul again, and suddenly this other man was claiming to be him publicly. Also, the body, what would have to be done with it? And by whom? More serious violations of law and professional ethics there. And what has been done with his royalties all these years? The fact that anyone ever believed that any of this was possible, or more to the point, never considered that all of this would have to happen, is just foolish almost to the point of being beyond comprehension. Story 32. Taking the COVID-19 vaccine would not inject microchips to track you. This was brought to me by my youngest sister and her boyfriend. They said it with such conviction and a straight face that I didn't know what to say. This was when vaccines were first rolling out, and I was trying to convince everyone I could to get vaccinated. I have 4 siblings, and I am fairly confident that to this date, none of them are vaccinated. I know my 2 youngest sisters have had COVID-19 multiple times. And yes, they have smartphones that can easily be used to track them, but it felt like trying to convince a rock to sprout legs and walk away. I've never been so sad and ashamed. Story 33. Chemtrails still intrigue me. They began in the 1970s or 1980s and continue to be seriously discussed in numerous circles, to the point where laws have been enacted. Story 34. That the Olympics sank instead of the Titanic was a fun theory to contemplate, but it has been definitively proven that it was the Titanic that went down. Story 35. Jewish space lasers. Soros controls the world economy. Obama was born in Kenya. Ted Cruz's wife is not ugly. Story 36. If you tell me that September 11th was an inside job, that it happened using controlled demolition, that Building 7 shouldn't have fallen down, that there was no plane at the Pentagon, that Flight 93 was shot down, that Mossad planned the whole thing, or anything about dancing Israelis, that the planes were holograms, that jet fuel can't melt steel beams, or that no Jews were in New York City on September 11th, I am going to assume you lack sound judgment. Story 37. I believe they give too much credit to the government, as if it has the intelligence, resources, or ability to keep large secrets, operate secret bases, and manage all the other things it is accused of. These are the individuals who text war plans on a messaging app. Story 38. Vaccines do not cause autism. While the flat Earth theory is nonsensical, it is harmless. However, the vaccine debate is more serious. There is a fine line between, I don't want the vaccine, and you can't have the vaccine, especially with individuals in leadership positions in health departments. Story 39. I know someone who insists that space is not real. He refuses to believe that the sun, moon, planets, and stars are that distant. Story 40. The conspiracy theories claiming that women like Michelle Obama, Lady Gaga, and Bridget Macron are secretly men have always seemed nonsensical. At least other misguided conspiracy theories can be interesting or entertaining. This one is simply absurd. Story 41. I had a coworker who was convinced that Bolsonaro, the former Brazilian president, was the secret son of Adolf Hitler. He claimed that Hitler only had 1 testicle and was unable to conceive children, so Joseph Mengele had several of his sperm samples in a lab, which he was using to genetically engineer the perfect Nazi heir. When Hitler died, Mengele supposedly fled to Brazil with the samples and created the son of Hitler using them. This can allegedly be proven by the fact that Bolsonaro was born 10 years after Hitler died and that he signed an anti-pet cruelty law, which apparently correlates with Hitler being vegetarian. He was so sure this was true that he believed once he published his book and revealed his theory to the world, Bolsonaro would be forced into exile. He often threw out random dates and would say, "See, do you think that's a coincidence?" And look at you, like he had just made a mind-blowing revelation. Story 42. A colleague of mine once told me he believes that cats, crocodiles, and other animals with slit or oval-shaped pupils are that way because they were genetically engineered in a laboratory, not because of evolution. Another time, he also said, "You probably believe the Earth is round too. Interesting guy." Story 43. There was a genuine concern that 15-minute cities were a tactic to consolidate the population into camps rather than an initiative for smart urban planning. Story 44. The creator of Catalika shares unusual ideas. Melanin is compared to chlorophyll, suggesting that people with darker skin are utilizing their unique capabilities to attack the sensitive skin of lighter-skinned individuals. Story 45. I used to work with a guy who was convinced that Jimmy Carter was actually John F. Kennedy. He believed the assassination was a hoax and that Kennedy ran for president again after undergoing plastic surgery. Story 46. Sunscreen is harmful. Some sunscreens contained an ingredient that was found to be carcinogenic, but people who stopped using it entirely may believe they are doing the world a favor by removing themselves from the general population. Story 47. Pick anything from The Onion in the last 20 years, and I guarantee it will be real in this timeline. Story 48. Holocaust denial is a disturbing phenomenon. One individual claimed that Zyklon B, a toxic chemical, is not that harmful, suggesting that it is possible to survive a concentration of 1% or 10,000 parts per million of cyanide in a gas chamber. This person claims to be a chemist. Another individual asserted that all Holocaust victims had to do to survive was hold their breath for 20 minutes. I researched gas executions in the United States using cyanide, and the findings are horrifying. Within 3 minutes, a person experiences convulsions, drooling, and is essentially brain dead. Story 49. Not the most ridiculous statement, but it frustrates me. Vaccines cause autism. My mother-in-law is a conspiracy theorist, but this is the most harmful belief. My oldest child has autism and was diagnosed at 2 to 3 years old. For the longest time, she denied his diagnosis. It didn't help that his diagnosis came from a certified nurse practitioner and not a doctor. She refused to believe it because it wasn't a doctor who diagnosed him, even though he could not undergo a comprehensive evaluation at just 2 years old. Now he is 5 and it is obvious he has autism. He exhibits clear stimming behaviors, is very sensitive to sensory input, and literally every doctor or therapist who has assessed him has confirmed the diagnosis, so she can no longer deny it. Now she is trying to find something else to blame, and she has become obsessed with vaccines. Even if that were true, it doesn't apply to my son since we waited until he was 2 to start his immunizations, and he was diagnosed before we began. Before anyone criticizes me, it was for health reasons, and he is fully up to date on everything now. However, my mother-in-law continues to push the issue about vaccines, and it doesn't help that we have one more child and another on the way. Story 50. The complete lack of physical archaeological evidence that supports the events or details of the Book of Mormon is not due to Joseph Smith fabricating it, but rather because for the last 200 years, all archaeologists, without exception, have been part of a conspiracy to withhold and destroy any evidence proving the Book of Mormon is true. This is said to be because it would contradict their other findings and, of course, because opposition exists against the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Story 51. I had a former coworker who would appear in my office at random and share the most outrageous paranoid theories you could imagine. It was endlessly entertaining. 1. If we allow same-sex marriage, they will breed us out of existence. Bill Clinton shot down TWA Flight 800 with a secret rescue helicopter armed with air-to-air missiles, secretly based at an Air National Guard base on Long Island. The reason there was no evidence of a missile strike? The night of the accident, the Central Intelligence Agency replaced the wreckage with that of another Boeing 747. Absolutely nobody witnessed this massive salvage operation because, look, a squirrel. Anyway, he did it to create mass panic so he and Hillary could take away my guns. What's that? Airplanes have been crashing since 1903 and there is no reason why mass panic would break out. There was no panic and no attempt at gun confiscation. Shut up about my guns. Our new president is a secret Muslim. We're all under Sharia law now. There's no freedom left in America. My guns. I'm moving to Russia. Have you seen shirtless Vladimir Putin riding a pony? The Confederacy never supported slavery. He saw the look on my face and quickly changed the subject. Electric cars are part of an evil conspiracy to undermine the coal industry, or something. Lifted diesel pickup trucks support the coal industry, Somehow, Black Lives Matter burns the city of Portland to the ground every weekend, but the liberal media covers it up. Story 52. The COVID vaccine is only for implanting a 5G chip in me so they can track me. He types on a mobile device with GPS that is glued to his hand. Story 53. Back in the late 1960s, there was a conspiracy theory that California would break off and float away in the Pacific Ocean. A surprising number of people believed it. Story 54. Some schools are allegedly putting litter boxes in bathrooms for students. This claim has been proven to be nothing but a scam and has circulated through 4 different countries. It was propagated by Republican politicians during midterm elections. Texas even passed a bill outlawing any non-human behavior by elementary school children, yet people still insist it is a real issue. I recently discovered that my brother-in-law believes this. Despite thorough investigations and all claims being proven false, he insists that public schools in New York are actually implementing this practice. Story 55. Tom Hanks and other celebrities inject endorphins and adrenaline taken from terrified children so the celebrity can maintain a youthful appearance. The flat earth theory is also a topic of discussion. Story 56. Contrails are often mistaken for chemtrails. There is some basic science behind this phenomenon. If the government were trying to poison or control us, wouldn't they conceal it more effectively? Moreover, if these so-called chemtrails were indeed influencing us, why aren't they affecting those who question their existence? Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.